So UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy and his boss Keir Starmer are facing the heat, and rightly so. This time the allegations against them are grave. They are being accused of misleading the parliament and the country over their arms export to Israel. In other words, they are being accused of lying, and that's pretty serious. To understand just how grave their crime is, you have to go back to September last year when Lammy took to the podium in the parliament to announce that his government had decided to cancel 30 out of over 300 arms licenses for Israel. As expected, he looked sad, nervous, and regretful. This is what he had said.
My life, I have been a friend of Israel, a liberal, progressive Zionist who believes in Israel as a democratic state and a homeland for the Jewish people, which has both the right to exist and defend itself. But I believe also that Israel will only exist in safety and security if there is a two-state solution that guarantees the rights of all Israeli citizens and their Palestinian neighbours who have their own inalienable right to self-determination and security. Mr. Speaker, as concern at the horrifying scenes in Gaza has risen, many in this House, as well as esteemed lawyers and international organisations, have raised British arms export licensing to Israel. After raising my own concerns from opposition on taking office, I immediately sought to update the review. And on my first appearance as Foreign Secretary in this House, I committed to sharing the review's conclusions. We have rigorously followed every stage of the process which the previous Conservative government established. And let me first be clear on the review's scope. This government is not an international court. We have not and could not arbitrate on whether or not Israel has breached international humanitarian law. This is a forward-looking evaluation, not a determination of innocence or guilt, and it does not prejudge any future determinations by the competent courts. But facing a conflict such as this, it is this government's legal duty to review export licences. Criteria 2C of the Strategic Export Licensing Criteria states that the government will not issue export licences if there is a clear risk that the items might be used to commit or facilitate serious violations of international humanitarian law. It is with regret that I inform the House today the assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I have informed my Right Honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, and he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350 to Israel as required under the Export Controls Act.
Now it has emerged that he had allegedly lied before the UK continued to export weapons to Israel that could be used against innocent Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. A new report jointly published by the Palestinian Youth Movement and Progressive International and Workers for a Free Palestine alleged that 8,630 items listed under the category bombs, grenades, torpedoes, mines, missiles, and similar ammunition of war and parts thereof other were exported from the UK after Lammy had announced the suspension in September last year. The report further added that, in addition, 4 shipments totaling 146 items described under customs codes for tanks and other armored fighting vehicles were delivered to Israel. This too was after the September suspension, according to the report. This has prompted as many as 43 MPs, mainly from the Labour Party, but also including members of the Liberal Democrats, Green Party, Scottish National Party, and several independents, to ask Lammy to appear before the House of Commons to respond to these allegations. he has chosen to remain unmoved up until now. I too asked him on Twitter yesterday if he had lied to the nation over arms export to Israel. This is what I tweeted yesterday. As expected, he has not responded. And I don't expect to receive any response from him. Last month, on 29th of April to be precise, Liberal Democrat MP Lee Dillon had raised this issue in Parliament. See what the junior minister, Hamish Falconer, had to say on this.
The minister in his statement said there can be no role for Hamas in the future of Gaza, which I support. But there can be no future for Gaza unless the killing and the destruction ends. Which is why in September last year it was welcomed that the government suspended 29 arms export licences following the concern that there was a risk they could be used to break international law by the Israelis in Gaza. However, a further 34 export licences to Israel were granted between September and December last year, more than were originally blocked. Can the Minister explain this decision and provide the latest number of arms licences to Israel that have been approved?
We set out in September, Madam Deputy Speaker, the basis on which we chose to suspend arms licences, and that basis remains. It is not a full restriction on providing licences. Many licences are provided either for dual-use goods or goods that could not possibly be used in relation to the activities that have caused concern. So there are, for example, licences that would be issued for body armour being used by NGO workers in Gaza. There will be dual-use items. There will be items also for the legitimate defence of Israel, for example, components that could enable their missile defence system to defend them against Iranian drones. I don't have the number of the exact licences. It does tend to change relatively regularly, just given the nature of the flow between the two countries.
If the report of arms export to Israel, even after the ban announced by Lammy, is true, then it's bloody serious and a direct admission of participation by the UK in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, because it was this fear that these arms could be used to kill innocent people that the UK government, led by Keir Starmer, had announced the ban last September. Now, if the UK government itself continued to supply dangerous offensive weapons to Israel despite the ban, this is enough to drag Lammy and his boss Starmer to the Hague. Lying, it seems, comes naturally to Labour leaders. Do you remember how war criminal Tony Blair had lied in the Parliament to make a case for the Iraq war? We all know what happened there. These bloodthirsty terrorists from the UK and the US killed more than 1 million innocent people. And there were no weapons of mass destruction there. If Blair was a PM of an African or Asian or Arab country, he would be languishing in jail for the rest of his life. Not too long ago, this chap called Keir Starmer was shamelessly being dismissive to an independent MP. I had made a video on his depravity. You can watch that video here. This also raises questions on the sanctity of the British institutions. Should the British public tolerate such blatant disregard to the country's institutions, such as Parliament, by these politicians? Last time, a Prime Minister called Boris Johnson lied in the Parliament over holding parties at the 10 Downing Street, the official residence of the Prime Minister during the COVID lockdown. A parliamentary inquiry had started, and he had to resign even before the inquiry report could be made public. Why should we have a different standard or yardstick for Lammy and Starmer? What's the difference here? Why have we seen only 43 MPs register their outrage and not more? Is it because this is concerning Israel? Are we going to allow a rogue regime of a settler colony built on the stolen land of Palestinians to bring disrepute to British institutions? Why should this be acceptable to British public? How are these Zionists able to wield so much of influence over British MPs just by paying a few thousands of pounds through donations? These are the questions, and very pertinent ones, every single taxpayer and voter should ask in the UK. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.